It is great to have you, Rajat, as our speaker today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Devanshi, for a kind introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining in. I really want to acknowledge that you're here. So let me ask, how many of you are really looking forward to some interesting learning experience that can help you in your work, in your growth? Right? And how many of you are really, actually planned this over something else that you wanted to probably attend to? So it's my honor and privilege that you chose to be here on this webinar. And it'll be my privilege to be with you for around next close to 1 hour. I really want to thank you that you've spent time to be here. You've wanted this to be in this forum, and I strongly believe that whoever is here in this webinar is here for a reason. We are probably connected by a cause. I'm not sure, but I would guess it, which is you could be in the area of business development, serving your customers, selling services, designing services, something to do with the customer. And also the fact that you happen to be here, there is some element of empathy and connection that you want to improve with your customer and design through that. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and please locate chat window in your console and find that chat window, because I really need to know if you're there, and I'm going to interact with you. Even if you can see me, I cannot see you. Probably there are hundreds of people joining in this webinar, but please trace the chat box and respond to me so that I can get the energy from you. So how many of you are ready for the session? Let me know. How many of you are ready? Typing in the chat box, I am, if you're ready for the session. Right, so that I know that you have joined in and that you are ready. All right, so
Okay, we have a lot of answers coming in, Rajat. Very well. Like everybody's ready. Everybody seems to be enthusiastic. We look forward for the session, Rajat.
okay, great, thank you. All right, so again, keep a track when I'm asking questions. I'm really going to interact a lot, and that's how I deliver webinar. So you bear with that. Once again, a warm welcome, and I believe that we are here for a cause. I think, as Devanshi mentioned, we are in really unprecedented times, and it's great to be focusing on something like empathy for business, and that's the topic for today. So before I go further, I really want to do a quick one poll. Question poll will come onto your screens. So Devanshi, I'll request you to bring it up, where we'll just know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Attendees, I'm launching the first poll. On your screens now, please select what is your overall industry experience, 0 to 4 years, 4 to 8 years, 8 to 12 years, 12 to 16 years, and more than 16 years. Once again, 30 seconds to go. 15 seconds more. All right, closing the poll now and sharing the results on your screen. 16% feel are of 0 to 4 years, 18% from 4 to 8 years of experience, again 18% from 8 to 12 years, 20% are from 12 to 16 years, and 29% more than 16 years. Thank you so much, audience. Rajat, please continue.
Okay, great. Thank you for responding to the poll. That tells us really, we have really a lot of experience in this community which has joined in. So it's my privilege and honor to serve you, and I'll try my best to be of help to you today. And therefore, I just want you, I like to begin with a bit of objectivity. So I really want you to, think about the intent of this webinar. And you, of course, have a topic in front of you, but let's make it even more specific. Is to share with me in the chat box what is your intent, what is your main intent of what do you want by the end of this webinar? What is your one takeaway that will help you in whatever you do? Do share that so that I can get started. Okay, great. So
Okay,
okay,
Rajat, I'll help you out here. People say that they are looking forward for studying some use cases to customer focus and identifying a good strategy. I think good enough.
okay, great. Thank you. So since I'm going to spend some time with you, I think Devanshi has already introduced me. I'll just take, I hope it's okay with you. I'll just take quick minute to give you a few things that I would like you to know, which is in context of what I'm trying to do here with all of you. So here I go. This is probably in 2015. This was my last assignment as an employee where I was leading an engagement with people from Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, India, and I was in a workshop which I was leading in Sweden. So this was my last assignment, and I like to work with the clients and co-create. Devanshi already mentioned I am first one in Asia Pacific and eighth in the world, certified customer experience mentor, and also been judging various CX awards. Fortunate enough to come up with my book in 2019, which is around customer experience design. Also have been invited by companies like Google to present. Now let's begin. Let's straight away jump into the content of the program. And since it's about designing, let me first share with you a personal experience, which is about a flight which I was taking from Pune to Delhi, Pune to Bangalore. I live in Pune, and Pune to Bangalore is a short flight. It was a 5:55 a.m. early morning flight. Of course, for that I had to get up early, say around 3 a.m. and I was at the airport in time and checked in, and I finally was inside the aircraft. And I was waiting for my morning cup of tea, like many of you would wait for. So while I was waiting, it took some time for them to serve. And eventually they served it. By the time I got it, it was time for them to collect back the tea cups. And so they came to me. I also wanted to use the washroom. So I reluctantly handed over the cup and used the washroom and came back into my seat. Really, I was still wishing I would have got my cup of tea. While I was really hoping to, get some refreshment, suddenly I hear a voice from an air hostess next to me saying, "Sir," I looked at her and she said, "Would you like another cup of tea? Because you couldn't have your tea." And I just was amazed. How could she read my mind? That's exactly what I was thinking about. And that was probably one of the kind of experience that had happened never before, never after. I don't know if it has happened with you, but I almost felt somebody read my mind. And I was so thankful. I got another cup of tea. I enjoyed that. And while I was on leaving the flight, I complimented the staff, saying how that was amazing service. And also, when I got down, I gave the feedback on the ground staff. They said, "This is the email. You can send an email with the feedback. That'll be nice." And I sent an email to the airlines, and I received a message back from them saying, these are the kind of experiences that makes our day. Now, my question to you is, as listeners, what do you think stand out for you in this whole experience? What enabled it? And I want you to now focus on the person, the behavior of the crew that made it happen for me, like almost like a magical experience. What was it? It was because of process? Was it because of, type it in the comment box in one word or two words? What was that? Was it observation? What word comes to your mind? And Devanshi, if you see the word empathy, let me know. I'm looking for that. Right. So right. So it is about that empathy. What differentiated this experience from any other? And we will go deeper into this, but that kind of experience was because for me, I don't know what you typed in or what you think, but it was because of, I believe, the sense of empathy. Do you agree? If you agree in the type, type in the chat box agree, right? So at this
Sure,
point, I
a lot
also,
of comments
yes,
coming in saying empathy to customer experiences was the best thing, what was looked after, to observation and attentiveness of the crew as well. So, but
right.
most probably this was about empathy. You're right.
Okay, great. Thank you. Really appreciate that. I think you're spot on. That is what we really need in the business. And I think the fact, and every time I get the opportunity, I share this experience. It's so memorable. Somebody says, a CX guru says, if you can make the experience unbelievable, I think it was probably in that category. That's, your differentiation. So at this point, I also want you to think about, I'll give you some few seconds to think about your most memorable experience as a customer. What was that? Was it while flying? Was it in a restaurant? Was it a vacation with your family? And of course, almost like 200 people already have joined the webinar, so I won't be able to hear anybody. But I really want you to think, and this is what I would like you to do, is think about the people who served you, people who created that experience for you, and think, then zoom in and further look at, like I told you about this crew, what was the attribute? What do you think was the behavioral triad? Process could be there, but that differentiated. Where they went, and type it in the comment box. Was it they went extra mile? Was it they really, kind of put themselves in to serve you? Was it a great service? What was it? What was the mindset, the attitude that you saw? One or two words to describe that, right? Because that itself is going to be the key ingredient of the differentiated experience. And my sense is that in that you will find an element of something to do with emotions. Whose emotions? Your emotions. Somebody has struck the chord with you so much, they have touched your heart. Type it in the comments box if you agree. Say I agree, right? So Devanshi, you want to say anything? What did you observe?
A lot of comments pouring in, agreeing with you, and giving their feedbacks like this is all about empathy. What you are able to feel should be the most important experience you should give as a business also, and as a customer, that is what you would like to hear.
Right, great.
So they agree on a broader perspective with you, Rajat.
Okay, thank you very much. So that brings us to really the agenda of today's presentation. And I'm going to cover, this is about how to use empathy to create customer or human-centric designs. So these are the things I'm going to cover. What is empathy? How to develop empathy, neuroscience of empathy, how exceptional customer-centric designs use empathy. And I really recognize and acknowledge the fact that you're from very huge set of industries. The last that I saw you, probably there were more than 100 different industries. So what I'm going to talk to you is going to be relevant to every industry. And I'll try to see that it's relevant and it's agnostic of any industry. Of course, that is my intent. So let me start by, sharing with you what really is empathy. What really is empathy? I think it is important for us to establish a common definition of that. And let me read it for you from the Oxford definition, which is empathy is ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. That is the definition of empathy. Very simply put, uh, it's really that ability to really think for others. And once somebody has it, they have it. Once you have it, you will be able to leverage that. And I think in this session, we are also going to see how to develop that. As I go further, I really want to let you know that there is a rather a distinct difference between empathy and sympathy. Okay, in a moment, I'm going to share with you a video. And this video is by Brené Brown. I don't know if you have heard about her name. She is a professor, a researcher, and she's an expert on writing soft subjects like vulnerability, empathy, courage, and her video on TEDx about vulnerability actually has seen by 47 million people. So if you don't know about her, you can find out. We'll just share a short 3-minute video from Brené. Over to you, Devanshi, if you could kindly play that.
Yes, sure.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
All right, thank you, Devanshi, for sharing that. I hope you enjoyed that, but let's just let's know what is it that you have learned from this presentation, this video. Let me summarize it for you. So the empathy fuels connections and sympathy drives disconnection. Sympathy is like, oh, is it? So there's a sense of, inspiring, motivating someone. Whereas empathy is putting themselves in their shoes and agreeing that, okay, there is something which is not really right, and it's fine. And let's first experience that. So it requires a sense of vulnerability. You have to open your heart. You have to first know how it feels. And therefore, not empathy is not for everyone, but it can be developed. So it's a vulnerable choice. For connection, it's the most powerful thing. So let's go deeper and really know why are we talking about empathy. And for that, I really want us to know a little about the context in which the industry is operating right now. Of course, there's a lot going on, but I really want to know from you, which age are we in? And I'm going to bring to you a picture in which I'm going to ask you to guess the age we are in. For example, if we look at the last 100 years, or little more than 100 years, from the era of 1900 to 1960, it was called as the age of manufacturing. And can you guess what was the age from 1960 to 1990? What was that particular age called as? You can take a guess. And what kind of companies were there? It was actually called as the age of distribution, because at that time, like today, because of effect of lockdown, we do not have enough of distribution happening. And you can imagine in that era, the distribution systems just opened up, and companies like Walmart, Toyota started to deliver their services and started to open stores so that they can reach far and wide. That was that era. And the 1990 to 2010, it was the age of information, when you could see companies like Amazon and Google started to show up. Now I want you to give a guess. What, and type it in the chat box. What is your guess? What is this age? From 2010 and up till now, we are running an age which is going to continue for many more years. What will that age be? What's your take? Okay, so let me give it away. It is the age of customer, because customer is at the center. It's the most powerful for the customer. And to give you an example, today, if you really want to buy something, do you reach out to the vendor and just believe the vendor or the service provider, or you talk to your friends on Facebook, social media, WhatsApp, and then figure it out? And you also watch a YouTube. Actually, when I presented at Google, I learned something very interesting, that 70% of the people making a decision of buying something, they first watch a video of the product on YouTube and then take a decision. So imagine the vendor in the olden days. I'm saying olden days, it was just probably 20 years back. There was, probably now you have so much, even for Amazon, if you want to buy a book, you have so many references already, authentic references to look at, and then you take a decision. That's why it is the age of customer, right? So typing in the comment box if you agree. And I'm now going to share with you something also very important as to why we really need to focus more on the customer and why on empathy. Here's a survey that was done for the service providers and the customer. And the service providers were asked, on a scale of 100, how would you rate yourself in your ability to provide a superior customer experience? And most of them said 80%. And the customers of the same service providers were asked the same questions. How well do you think these companies provide you the experience? And what can you guess what was their response? Type in the chat box, what is your response? What do you think they would have given as a number? Okay, so let me disclose it to you. It was mere 8%. Difference of 10 times. So imagine the difference of 10 times when the service provider thought they are there, and the reality is 8%. And that is what is all about, the perception. And that's why we need to be able to step ourselves into customer shoes, and anybody who's serving. That is why empathy is a powerful tool. And I'm now going to share with you another question, another poll. So Devanshi, I'll request you to get geared up to take a poll from you. What do you think? Okay, so here's a poll coming up for all of you. Devanshi, over to you.
Sure. Yeah. Attendees, I'm launching the poll. What do you think makes the customer experience most memorable for the customers? Please select in here: knowledge of the service providers, second, personalization of service provided, speed of service provided, empathy towards customer needs and emotions, or deeper understanding of the customer needs. 15 seconds more to go. Okay, closing the poll and launching the results now. 2% think knowledge of the service providers, 9% personalization of service provided, 5% speed of service provided, 55% think empathy towards customer needs and emotions, whereas 29% stand at deeper understanding of the customer needs. That's great. Thank you so much, attendees. Over to you again, Rajat.
Yeah, thank you everyone for responding to the poll. If you look at it, the last two questions itself, 55 and 29%. Deeper understanding of customer emotions, deeper understand with empathy, and deeper understanding of customer needs. This put together is 84%. And I think that's what it is. 84% of the people really don't care about the knowledge of somebody who's selling the product, about how they look and what they wear. What they really want is that deeper connection, isn't it? If you agree, type it in the comment box. Agree, right? Because that's why it's so critical for us to know what is really going on. And that's the reason why we need empathy for developing customer-centric design. I'm going to share with you a quote by Tim Cook, who is the CEO of which company? Apple. And this is what he told at the commencement address at a university, where he said, people will try to convince you that you should keep empathy out of your career. Don't accept this false premise. In a recent survey of 150 CEOs, over 80% recognized empathy as a key to success. And why I'm sharing this is that many a times in the corporate world, people think you don't bring your heart, you don't be touchy, you don't be really that softer person. And sometimes people ask me, is it a good virtue to have empathy? And if what's going on right now and what's the future holding, I think empathy is going to be a very strong skill in demand. In fact, all the surveys are pointing to that. That's why Tim Cook is talking about it. That's why 80% of the CEOs are talking about it. And I'm going to share with you, someone who's an expert in customer experience, and she's a CX guru, top 30 CX guru in the world. Her name is Jean Bliss, and she has written several books. And one of her recent books is titled like this: Would You Do That to Your Mother? Interesting title, isn't it? Type it in the chat box if you find it interesting. Why is she saying that? Because she thinks that if you can deal with your customer like it's your mother, then probably that's the best strategy. Okay, and that requires a different approach. The other book she has written, interestingly, is I Love You More Than My Dog. Again, an element of emotion there. So you see that expertise is leading all towards bringing that element. We can't go far, and we can't without it, and we can't go wrong with it, is what I would like to say. Okay, so let me share with you. How many of you are familiar with design thinking? Type it in the chat box if you're familiar with design thinking. Type in saying I. If you're familiar with the design thinking, type it in the chat box I. Okay, because I'm going to share
So
with
many
you
responses getting, Rajat, everybody agreeing with you and engaged with you on the online portal. Amazing to know that. Please continue.
okay.
I'm sorry for the
Okay, no, you can. Thank you so much. That helps me. That gives me the clarity that you're with me. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Okay, great. So what I'm going to share with you really is certain design thinking models, and if you've heard about it, great. And what you probably would have noticed, and I'm not sure if everybody is aware, that design thinking is one of the most powerful ways to deliver transformational results where other approaches have failed, or where you want to design a powerful new product. I don't know which industry, but no industry can be left out with its ability to create transformational customer experience. And here is what I want to tell you. It's a very simple flow. It's by Stanford University Institute of Design. It's very simple. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. And what I want to tell you is it always starts with empathize. Okay, because I'm going to share with you another design thinking model by another expert organization, interactiondesign.org. If you really want to go deep into the subject, please check on this site. Again, their model also starts with empathy. Why is everybody talking about this? Really, there must be some reason. So the simple reason is that unless we are able to put ourselves in our customer's shoes, there's no point going further. If we have not put that particular thing in place, then we are not designing for the customer. Then we are just creating a process. Are you with me? Type it in the comment box if you're with me. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you something around how to use empathy to transform customer experience. And now I'm going to share with you a simple process. You can take note of this. It's really very simple. And I'm going to give you a case study. Some of you actually early in the webinar talked about seeing the case study. Now the case study is coming. It's a very simple case study, but I would like you to be listening intently because I'm going to ask you a few questions after that. Okay, so here's a simple process, which is when you want to design using empathy, first of all, define the focus area. Then identify if there's an empathy gap, which is what we'll tell you in a moment. Specify consequences of empathy gap, what is the impact of that? Agree a design intervention. What do you really need to do? And locate touch points for empathy where you can actually help improve the empathy and measure results. To give you an example, I was facilitating a design thinking workshop with an organization, and there we were defining the touch points, and I asked one person to actually literally hold a shape of heart in their hand so that whenever they feel they are going off track, the person can remind, just think of the customer. Another practice I would like to share with you is at Amazon. Anybody from Amazon, type in the chat box from Amazon, because they have a beautiful practice initiated, I guess, by Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, where they leave one chair empty in all their meetings. And I have a friend in Amazon in India who lives near my house, and he was sharing this practice also, that they leave a chair empty and imagining that this is the customer sitting, and whenever they're discussing, they think the customer is always listening. So they design this process. So I gave you really some interesting practices, isn't it? If you like that, type it in the chat box like that. So now I'm going to share with you a simple case study. This is a case study from Denmark, a place called Holstebro. There's a municipality of Holstebro in Denmark which takes care of aged people, and their role is to actually provide them subsidized rate food and take care of them, because many of them are staying alone and nobody's there to take care of them. So they send them the food, and what suddenly they realize is that the offtake of food is reduced significantly. So they got worried about these aged people, thinking these guys are getting malnutrition and not taking care of themselves. So they hired an agency called as Hatch and Bloom, and this design agency's job was really to find out how to increase the offtake of the food. But when this design agency started to get working, they discovered many things. What they started to do is they started to spend time with the aged people, observing them, and they found out their aged people have lost the zest of living. They do not really enjoy anything, including the eating food, and the food was also not so interesting for them to really feel up to it, and therefore they were just eating very less and getting malnutrition. That was one thing they found out. Then they started to speak with observe closely what I'm sharing. Then they started to speak with the chefs to find out what's wrong with the food. They found out the food was just okay, nothing really wrong. And these chefs were talented people, but they didn't knew enough about the people whom they were serving. In other words, they were not connected with them. In other words, they probably did not have empathy for them. So they started to ask them to spend time, observe these aged people, visit them, serve themselves, and find out what's going on. Also, they started to speak to the other stakeholders, like the delivery folks, those people who deliver. And they also found out that the delivery van was very uninteresting. Imagine a corporation van delivering a food. It was a very uninteresting process. On top of it, actually, aged people will feel embarrassed when the van would come, stand in front of their house, that they can't even cook for themselves. So they started to identify so many things, and then they started to look at making the food interesting, to add some innovation to that. It made some names, changed the names of the dishes and made them sound interesting. Like, if you think about like palak paneer, like if you imagine, or shahi paneer, right? You imagine if you just somebody says, it's just a dish, dal tadka, you always hear that in the restaurant. So they started to add that bit of tinged so that this sounds interesting. Also, they made sure the packaging was really nice and attractive so that people feel like opening it. And they changed the place from the Halsbro Municipal Kitchen to Good Kitchen, and they really repainted the van with the nice, vibrant colors. All that started to show some results very interestingly. And as a result, what you see here in the process is, if we look at the process that I shared with you, they defined the focus area in the beginning, which was improved of food offtake, and then identify empathy gap, help aged get healthier. Earlier, they were not even connected with them. And they ran series of workshops so that everybody come together and see it with aged people's clarity, who they are, what are their pain points, what are they going through. So they identified gaps and then specify consequences of empathy gap, because of which they were feeling malnutrition and reduced sale. And then what they did is they agreed to build deeper understanding, went deeper and deeper. It was like peeling off the onion. Every time they kind of went deeper, they learned something. Design thinking is like that. Empathy design process is like that. In the beginning, at the surface, the problem statement was very different than what they realized later on. So locate touch points for empathy, found out at the point of serving them, at the point of delivering them, at the point of packaging. Everywhere there was an opportunity for transformation, and then measure what really happened, which was to have improved sales and better health. And let me share with you some of the statistics out of this case study. There was 22% increase in the customer satisfaction in a very short period of time, almost within 3 months. and 78% increase in the sales of healthy dishes and improved collaboration across institutions involved in the food service. That's so amazing. And here's coming up 500% increase in certain meal orders in the first week alone. If you found this case study powerful, type it in the chat box, powerful, because these are very, if you look at it, it was something was very obvious but not obvious. And when the design agency started to bring empathy into the whole process, started to sensitize the chefs for the people whom they were serving, delivery van people whom they were serving, the whole scenario started to look very different, right? If you like the case study, type it in the comment box, like it. Now let me share with you what really can happen. Even with the best, and the best of the companies can sometimes go wrong, especially when they miss out on this element of empathy. And I know there are leading companies, people, senior leaders primarily on this program. And let me caution you that when we miss out on this, big mistakes can happen. And let me give you an example of none other than Google. Okay, how many of you have heard about the Google Glass product? Google Glass, a smart glass which has very powerful kind of search engine, a camera there. Type it in the comment box, if you have already heard about some time back about Google Glass. So Google Glass was really something which was designed without empathy. And here's what MIT technology review was of this product. They said no one could understand why you would want to have that thing on your face in the way of normal social interaction. So I'm wearing a glass, imagine, and when I'm face to face with you, imagine that I'm talking to people in person and there's a camera here, and it's like popping on the side, and then how weird it can look. And not everybody is wearing it, only few people are wearing it, carrying it with them. Probably these people will actually ostracize themselves and become differentiated for the wrong reason, isn't it? And if you today we say, okay Google, right, hey Siri, for Android and Apple phones, and there we would say, okay Glass, send a message. It showed Google's lack of empathetic understanding about the social situation in which people would go and wear it. So there wasn't the product was technologically very advanced, but socially not. How would people feel about it? And that nondescript camera added to even more problem, right? So these are some of the examples where really, when you are not on clearly on the heart of the matter, you could go wrong, right? You agree if you agree with this. Okay, now I'm going to share with you, this piece is really very powerful, because a lot of people ask me, can we develop empathy? To tell you, it's not easy, but it's really possible if we are consistently putting effort, if there is an intention. And you can develop it within teams very easily if you have a process in place and if you have an intention. So intention is the first thing to have empathy. Now here I'm going to share with you one of my personal stories. I used to work with an IT company some time back, where my client was in UK, a telecom service provider like Airtel, Vodafone, Idea of today. And there I have always been in the customer facing role. Even in the IT services, at some point I was mostly involved in business analysis and of requirements and all. So I said to my company that please allow me to visit the call center where our product, the CRM product, is being used by the advisors whom we speak when we call. So these advisors were the people who were using the application, and they are always referring the data. So I ended up at the call center in UK, and it was an amazing, vibrant environment. The call center lead took me around, showed me the place. I met a couple of interesting people, and finally I was observing them. I was actually able to spend a day in their life. I was able to almost like walk in their shoes. And towards the end of the day, she also allowed me to meet people who were using the application. These people thought I'm the inventor of the CRM tool, which was actually today acquired by Oracle. But they talk to me passionately about what they look for and what is missing in the product. And I made a lot of notes, and when I came back, my perspective was completely changed. And I shared that information with everyone in my company who was part of my team. And one thing I want to tell you is, there is nothing more powerful. If you are from the IT industry, if you are from the automobile industry, if you are from the engineering industry, especially if your strength is engineering products, please, please, and please do not miss out on spending time with the users and spending a day in their life or days in their life. The more you are able to spend time with them, and therefore I said it's not easy, but it is easy if you have the intention. There is nothing more powerful than that. So let me tell you something about the neuroscience of empathy. Why I'm telling you what I'm telling you right now. The observer's brain activity, if you're the observer spending time, like I spend time with the advisors of the telecom, resembles someone actually engaged in the activity being observed, then you would become like them. You would start to have feelings like them. Like, for example, today during the lockdown, many of you would be able to relate to some of the home chores which you never imagined were done like this. Type in the comment box you're more empathetic towards what's being done at home, right? On the lighter note. But what I'm telling you is, when you are close to the observer and truly putting yourself in that shoes, not just watching, but also being able to put yourself in that shoe, your empathy quality is going to go up. Another example is, there was a radiologist in Israel, and he was actually feeling restless because when he was reading report, he could not even imagine whose report he's reading, because he could not see the many a time the patient. So he was trying to figure out, and what came up in his mind is that he requested that the patient's picture be put onto the report. And when he started to look at the digital photo, suddenly his connection jumped up. So he started to get more detailed and meticulous, and there was that deep connection established. Now this is really interesting, and this is easy to do, and I've tried it many a times. Just make sure that there is some way that you can peep into the customer's life. You can even just visually see them. That is going to make a big difference. The session is small, but otherwise I've talked to you about personas, which I cover in my detailed workshops, how to define persona so that you can actually nail it so clearly that nobody can compete with you. We go into that when we do our detailed workshop for 2 to 3 days, even virtually. So here I'm going to share with you another example, an interesting example. So here is a company, many of you would have heard, who has heard of this company, Apsara and Netraj pencils, who make those sharpeners, pencils, and rubbers. Now, a mother wrote the letter to them that you've made the sharpeners mostly for the right-handed use, but my kid is a left-handed. Why can't you do something about my kid? So they listened and actually sent her some prototype that, okay, we're happy to hear from you and we're happy to do something about you. So they did that. Now, what I really liked about is their responsiveness and their intent to do something about it. Again, if you're able to listen, even if there's a small segment, you could be opening up a completely new business opportunity for that. If you like this example and found it interesting, type interesting in the chat box. Okay, now I'm going to share with you something really very powerful. Again, some companies do that, is going deep into understanding about their customers as deep as they can. So it's called as ethnography. Ethnography is really studying people and writing about them. And sometimes company employ such people who can spend time living in that place. For example, if you want to launch something which you want to launch in, for example, south part of India, so you would have somebody living in the southern part of India. If you want to do something in north, so you send somebody living in Punjab, right, in Chennai, Punjab. Or if you want to do something outside of India, for example, Japan, then that person stays there for a year. I have worked with a company where it was the reverse ethnography, where they do projects for Japanese and Korean people, especially. So they had a Japanese and a Korean who were part of my training as well, who is living in India for many years now. And they bring that deep perspective, deep understanding of the cultural elements, how they think, how they feel, what they eat, what are the kind of things that matters to them. So you get a deeper understanding of. That's another powerful way to design for your customers. Again, that's a very specialized way of doing it. Okay, so I've been really pacing fast because I didn't want you to miss all that I wanted to share with you. And I think I'm just towards the end of my presentation so that we can open up for questions in a moment. So let me recap really, because this is the key element I want you to be aware of. One is, that empathy is a key ingredient for creating transformational designs. And the second is, you can develop empathy. And how to develop empathy is dig deeper below the surface. Like in the example of Good Kitchen, you can really find out so much, like peeling the onion. as and when, but you need to have the process. So the process I shared with you is one of the simple examples of using how to go about it. Then listen for emotional needs. Many a times we just listen needs at the surface level. That's not enough. At least you have to reach to the next level, that why somebody wants certain product. Is it because of status? Is it because they want to take care of their children? They want to make a difference. They want to make a impression. There is a deeper level, and then if you continue to go deeper, you will find out. For example, that mother asking for that left-handed sharpener was a unique thing. So unique perspectives will come out. See the prospect and to connect deeper. So see if you can actually, whenever possible, if your teams who are not able to travel to be with the customer, especially in this era, how will you figure out in the virtual world? In the virtual world, this is going to become even more important, that you at least hear them, see them. We had this option of doing this webinar of me not being visible to you on the video. But personally, I like that you could see me. Ideally, I would have liked to see you as well. And you would agree that would have been even more engaging, and I would have found out how you are perceiving what's going on in your world, at least when you're with me, right? So I'm just saying, so whenever you have the opportunity, see that in the virtual world, you have an opportunity to know the person, see the person, and feel the person, right? That's where the empathy will come from, even with the teams. I could share with you ample amount of data where we have found out that with the empathy, the teams are more engaged. The engaged teams deliver better results. Okay, experience walking in their shoes. Like I gave you example of me spending time in the call center. Now, how would you do that? I think innovation will start to happen when today, of course, eventually things will get better, but ways in which you can take time to be with your customers. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Hope you liked it. If you liked it, type in the comment box, liked it. And please type in the comment box your number one takeaway, because I'm at the end of the presentation. This is the second last slide. In the next one, I'm just going to share my coordinates and I'll give it to Devanshi. So just type it in the comment box. What has been your key takeaway in the last 35 odd minutes? And here is my coordinates. You can connect with me. I have a YouTube channel, new one, relatively new one. I am on LinkedIn, pretty active, and this is my email ID. So if you want to stay connected with me, please feel free to reach out and connect on these platforms. Type in the comment box what has been your key takeaway and how did you find this? Over to you, Devanshi. I'm done.
I am reading some of the responses before we jump into the Q&As. Like, people loved what you shared as your experiences and case studies, understanding like the examples of all the concepts, especially the empathy gap, what you talked about has got great reviews. And the story with would you do that to your mother has got great responses online here itself. So interestingly good, I feel we've got a very nice feedback from the audience and a good takeaway from your session, Rajat. With that, we open for attendees the Q&A session. And Rajat, I will read out to you a couple of questions. In the interest of time, we might not be able to take all the questions, but please do drop in, attendees, your questions, and I will make sure that they get reached to Rajat, and he will come back with possible responses, which will be responded to your registered email IDs by next week. All right, so beginning with the questions, I have one here. How one should focus with diversified customers with various mindsets and how we should tackle the wish versus needs.
Right. So, a great question. I mean, again, I think I probably would have asked and gone deeper to know which industry you're talking of. But I get what you're saying. First is really, the deeper you're able to build the understanding of your customers. So one thing which is very powerful is the persona. Do you understand what keeps them awake in the night? What is really their need? Sometimes, sometimes if you remember that even the Ford car was invented, even, the Ford was, Henry Ford used to say, if you would have asked people what they, need, they would have asked for a better version of a bullock cart. Instead, the car came up. And the reason is that sometimes you need to go deeper and identify, based on what you can offer, is where is their true need. And for that, you need to be able to ask them question and spend time with them. I think somewhere, if you can help move them from where they are to a desired state, right? Many a times there are perceptions, or there is a huge wish list, which I understand. But if you can get them move from point A to point B, which is the point B obviously is better than point A, and you can demonstrate that your product or service help them move from point A to point B clearly, and you can also give them a system which you use to make them move from point A to point B. Again, without knowing the product, I could have been more specific, but it's about changing their life. It's you could transform them and make them feel and live better and become better, become, live and be better versions of whatever life they have. That is what purely is the most powerful thing, and that will also take away this confusion of wish versus need. I don't know if it helped you your answer your question. Probably that's what I can say.
Okay, great. We'll take one or two questions more in the interest of time. Second question coming up, Rajat, how to tackle an internal customers within an organization and change the mindset, like business processes may take the whole user journey difficult. Any recommendations or suggestions from your end?
See, the most simplest, again, I know what you're saying. Most simplest way, especially for the people who are involved in the customer uh, experience improvement area, is that they have to get buy-in from a lot of people. And not everybody is onboarded, each one. So finance will not be thinking for a customer the way probably sales will think and marketing will think. And there are some business functions which will not completely be onboarded. So there are few things which are important. Number one is it should come from the leadership. The leadership who's driving customer experience has to be really strong. Number two is communication. Number three is if you have a strong business case and you are able to prove, because many of them will ask the ROI. Number four is, can you simplify what are you talking about? What do you really mean by, if you're talking about improved customer experience, what does it really look like? So very key, but the most important again is having sponsorship from the leadership, and then make sure that there's enough communication going on, and don't and break that silos, and have the KPIs for each person in the company who should be broken down into how they are related to improve customer experience. It's not one functions on one business unit's job. The moment you start to think as a one business unit, one business functions job, you have made your life difficult. I hope you understand what I'm saying, and I hope it helped you. I can keep it short. Thank you for a great question again.
Okay, so we'll go for a one last question where I'm merging a couple of questions where the main point of asking Rajat you is like, what is the best way you can serve your customer deeply, where especially in this area and the upcoming era where physical visits and physical interactions are not possible.
Again, I don't know the product or service, but I imagine that it will be something where you will have to have increased touch points. Please innovate. Please innovate. Please, the thing that you've asked me, I will answer. I'll ask you back that today, what is important for your customer? Let's say if it's a diagnostic, if you are serving for solving problem for them, for example, it's about something to do with the maintenance. Create video manuals. Make them simple. There is a lot that's happening which is virtual. Can you use the technology of virtual presence in a way that makes it very easy for them? The other thing which I learned from Google is, for example, if you're today typing, Google Gmail will type the next to the whole word next to that. So there is a assisted learning. I was talking to somebody who's a startup. He said, I suddenly realized after talking to you that how much I can use the power of Alexa, and they want to improve the productivity of the people. That was his product. He said, I can use Alexa because Alexa could be in the homes of the people. So look at what's already with the people. So technology, internet, videos, power of using that, simplifying, creating manuals. So, and make sure you are continuously in touch with them, and build communities. So build communities whom you are upgrading. Create your own tribe. Seth Godin says, who's the leading marketer, when you create your tribe, even for 100 followers, then you have got it forever for your life. So create tribe whom you're serving and serving and serving. Don't always look about getting immediate cash. I hope it makes sense to you. Thank you for the great question.
All right, it has been a great interaction, Rajat. There are many questions which I'm gonna roll out to you offline, and attendees, I will get back with the possible responses from Rajat by next week, as noted earlier. So with that, we come to an end of this session, and on behalf of Nasscom ER&D, I would like to thank you, Rajat, for a very insightful session. Attendees had a great time engaging with you as well. Thank you all the attendees for joining in today, and we look forward for your participation in our upcoming events and webinar series. Links are already put up on the chat section of the console. Please do have a look and stay connected. Also, we would love to hear your feedback, and hence requesting each one of you to kindly fill the survey form within 24 hours of receiving the follow-up email on your registered email IDs. So thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe, stay alert, keep your families, friends, and yourself safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.